Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Whether it's retirement or changes in production, finances, or families, there are as many reasons why producers need to sell equipment and land as there are ways to sell it. Today, SUNUP's Curtis Hare takes us to an auction in Mayes County where a retiring producer is selling nearly all of his assets.
Well, I'm pretty much selling everything I've got.
It will eventually happen. The day when a producer decides to hang it up and retire. For Robert Chuck, a Mayes County cow-calf producer, that day is today.
I've been raising cattle and farming and baling hay, and I'm 68 years old, and it's time to slow down.
Robert recently sold off all of his cattle, and today he's liquidating nearly every asset he has in an auction. Although Father Time is catching up to him, age isn't the only reason he's leaving the farm life.
I've been doing it for a long time, and I'm kind of wore out. And you know, 4 or 5 years ago, the commodity price as far as cattle was really good. But then over the last 3 or 4 years, it's kind of been going downhill some. And I had an opportunity to buy a retail store, so I'm kind of taking my assets in that direction.
This is a common situation for many Oklahoma producers. Oklahoma State agricultural economist Rodney Jones says there's been an uptick in producers liquidating assets to curb financial strain.
You know, we're in about our 6th or 7th year of pretty low commodity prices, seeing some financial stress show up, and we have people sometimes that have to liquidate some assets just to kind of get themselves back on their feet and move forward financially.
There are several reasons why producers would sell property, and there's several ways they can go about making a sale. Auctions are a popular method for producers selling multiple assets like Robert. For moving single items, social media sites like Facebook Marketplace are also popular. Although it may be easier to sell today than before, it's still a complicated process.
Well, they need to think about you know, how much cash they need and why do they need the cash and for what purposes, and that's going to help them create kind of a list of things that might be on the table to think about liquidating. We always make the recommendation that we start thinking about selling those things that are the least critical to your operation.
Machinery that isn't being used or equipment that can be easily replaced fits into this category. For more cash flow, producers will need to look at assets that are critical to the operation.
Kind of a last resort is usually the core asset that we have in agriculture, which would be the land, but every once in a while we find a situation where somebody needs to generate quite a bit of cash, and of course that's where a lot of the cash is tied up, is in the land.
For Robert, he and his family did a lot of planning and preparation before today's auction, though he feels he could have done more when it comes to tax implications. Something he recommends producers think about before liquidating.
Yeah, I think they should. I definitely think they should. Something I wished I would have checked out a little more as far as the tax liability on, you know, liquidating like this.
For Robert, the decision to liquidate all of his assets and move on to a new opportunity wasn't an easy decision to make. He's been a cow-calf producer right here on this land for more than 40 years, and it's a bittersweet end.
You know, to be honest with you, if this other opportunity wouldn't have come up, I might still hang in it for a couple more years. This is all I know.
So JC, talking with Robert, he mentioned that he had done a lot of preparation when he was about to liquidate his assets, but he wished he would have done a little bit more in regards to tax implications. So what are some tax implications producers need to think about if they're going to liquidate an asset or assets?
Okay, you've got really 2 major parts. You've got the machinery and equipment, and then you've got your land. So the machinery and equipment creates a requirement for depreciation and recapture in the year we sell it. So no matter what happens, you're sold, we have to that's recaptured as ordinary income at the ordinary income tax rates, and those can be quite significant. Land, it's a capital gain asset. It gets a preferential tax treatment because the capital gains rates are much lower than the ordinary income tax rates.
So let's continue talking about the depreciable assets. What are some things that producers need to think about in regards to that?
One thing to think about is how much depreciation recapture will there be. For example, you buy a tractor and you depreciated it out over its useful life, and it goes to the depreciable basis is zero. You sell that thing for, say, $50,000, that's all ordinary income in the year sold. So you've got a lot of this, and typically farmers have depreciated everything down to zero, so it's all of that income is ordinary income due to the depreciation recapture.
And there's a variety of reasons why producers would need to liquidate assets. Not every situation's like Robert. Every situation's going to be different. But if a producer is looking to sell some land, that there's ways that they can minimize the taxes that they could occur, right?
Correct. Installment sales is a great tool for reducing or minimizing taxes, especially on land, because what you've got is the ability to spread that income over 2 or more years. And by doing so, you only pay tax on the amount that you receive as a payment in that year. So if you spread an installment sale over 2 years, you're going to pay tax over 2 years, half of the tax bite in each of those. If you spread it out over 10 years, you can kind of see the concept of we're spreading the tax bite out over a period of 10 years, and by doing so, we can really manage how much we do pay in terms of capital gains tax on the sale of land.
And a lot of this information that you gave, you know, it's really complex and it can be a struggle for a lot of people. So, but Oklahoma State does have some resources that can help producers, you know, move around a situation like this.
Correct. The Farm Transition Handbook is a great tool, because what we're looking at in there is ways of farmers getting out of the business and different tools they can use, different tax aspects to think about. So it's a great tool to begin the process of thinking through the sale of the farm business, or the transfer of the farm business from one generation to the next, or from one person to the next.
All right, thanks, JC. If you'd like a link to that farm handbook, go to our website, SUNUP.okstate.edu.
We're joined now by Dr. Rosslyn Biggs, an extension beef cattle specialist. And Dr. Biggs, your appointment is actually in the School of Veterinary Medicine.
Yes, I'm with the College of Veterinary Medicine. I do have a large portion of my appointment that is with OSU Extension as well.
Great. Well, we're glad to have you on board. And this week we want to talk about cold stress in calves in particular. This time of year, you and your colleagues see more people bringing in their animals to the veterinary hospital. Kind of talk about that and what's going on as calving season gets underway.
Sure. Well, you know, as we enter calving season, you know, producers have a significant investment getting to this point. And so it's a good time to really kind of brush up on plans. Equally important is having a discussion with your veterinarian on signs that you need to be looking for, and what to do and what the plan is when things don't go quite as we had hoped. You can never intervene too early in my mind if we really sense that there's the problem going on, and being prepared what to do next is key. You know, do you have the facilities at the place to accommodate a delivery, or are we best to have the truck and trailer hooked up and ready to go to head on into the veterinary clinic?
We're winding down February, of course, but we have, no doubt a few more weeks of cold left in Oklahoma. Are there any particular concerns when the temperatures get below a certain stage?
Sure. Well, definitely with these calves, we've hopefully prepared the mothers of those calves well vaccinated. They're their nutritional plane is in good shape there. If we come upon a calf that seems like they're down, an easy thing to have in your calving kit is just a digital thermometer, and temp those calves. If they're under 100 degrees, we need to be really taking some activity there, bring them indoors, get them warmed up. We can look at warm water baths, the hair dryer method, warm air, warm towels. We want to be cautious though when we're getting those calves warm, that we're not completely taking off that odor of amniotic fluid for that cow, because we want her to take that calf back. And so monitoring those temperatures and easing them up to that 100-degree mark is going to be really important. We have a recent article. It's on our website for the College of Veterinary Medicine under continuing education, and those are sorted by species. So just have to pick cattle on there, and it has that article there with a lot more detail for folks to take a look at.
Great, we'll take a look at that. Great to have you on board, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for a link to that article, just go to SUNUP.okstate.edu.
As we go through this spring calving season, I think it's relatively important that we keep in mind the nutritional changes that are required for these cows as they go from being late gestation cows and early lactation cows, or those right after calving, because their nutrient requirements do increase quite a little bit. For instance, if we've got a 1,200-pound cow in a late pregnancy, she requires about 1.9 pounds of crude protein every day. And in terms of energy, and we refer to total digestible nutrients as TDN, that's the form of energy most people are comfortable talking about. That cow requires 12.9 pounds of TDN every day. Once she's had that calf and starts to give milk, that changes dramatically. Her protein requirement jumps up to 2.9 pounds per head per day, which represents about a 52% increase in the protein that she needs. Her energy requirement goes up to 16.8 pounds, and that represents a 30% increase in energy that cow needs, just due to the fact that she's started into the early stages of lactation. I think we need to keep in mind also that cow will consume just a little bit more voluntarily because she's a lactating beef cow. We'll see that the cow that's the 1,200-pound gestating cow voluntarily consume about 24 pounds of 100% dry matter feed. After she's calved, even though she's lost some weight due to the fluid loss, the calving loss, placental weight loss, that 1,100-pound cow that's lactating now will consume about 29 pounds of dry matter feed, and that's a 20% increase. That means that we probably need to increase the quality of her diet, which in my mind means we probably need to increase the amount of supplement that cow's consuming. For instance, if we've been feeding a 30% crude protein supplement, if we increase the feed by 3.3 pounds per head per day, that'll make up that difference in the protein needs of that cow and do a great deal in terms of meeting the increased energy needs, plus the fact that we know that cow will consume just a little bit more in terms of the hay that we put out, and the two things combined should meet her energy needs. Go to SUNUP's website. That's SUNUP.okstate.edu. Look under show links, and we've got a link there to an excellent pamphlet done by Dr. Dave Lawman here at OSU, and it will be a real helpful piece of information for you as you figure out what feed you need for your cattle each time during the different parts of the year. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
The world's getting more and more concerned with the coronavirus as it starts to spread. So, Derrell, what impacts has it already had on beef markets?
Well, you know, there's been a couple of waves already. The initial uncertainty when the thing kind of became an issue in, what was that, early February, caused futures markets to make a correction. They were kind of looking for an excuse to correct. They did that. We sort of started recovering from that, and then more recently we've actually seen some impacts that have caused additional reaction in the market.
So what's the expectation of going forward as this virus starts to spread more and more? What's the future impacts that's going to have?
Well, obviously we don't know for sure on a global scale. It looks like now this thing is moving beyond China to have bigger impacts, and that leaves a lot of uncertainty in the U.S. as well as around the world. you know, what we've seen so far in China has been really two impacts on the sort of demand side with the shutdown, the restrictions on movement and so on. That affects demand. The other thing has been logistical problems. And so with China largely shut down, their ports are shut down. They simply cannot receive any product right now. Ports are backed up. Just because they don't have the labor in place to unload. So we've already seen those impacts. Those kinds of things could continue to grow, and the global impacts may get a lot bigger as we go forward.
The last time we spoke, you gave your overall outlook like you normally do at the start of the year of what beef markets and beef imports are going to look like, beef imports and exports. So does this change anything that with the coronavirus, does that change your outlook at all?
Well, I guess at this point I would say no, but you know, obviously we're watching this. I think we have to be prepared to modify it. This has the potential to be one of those truly sort of black swan events, those things that you can't predict. They jump up, they have a major impact, and we're really still trying to assess that situation at this point. So I think we have to be prepared for the idea that this could really alter the trajectory of these markets as we go forward this year.
And we'll keep checking back in with you on that.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Derrell. Derrell Peel, livestock marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, Wes Lee with the weekly Mesonet weather report. After a warm start to the year, temperatures have spent many days lately below what is normal for this time of the year. With crops, soil temperature is extremely important. Earlier this week, 4-inch soil temps under sod ran from the high 30s in the Panhandle to over 50 in the southeast. This may seem fairly cool at first glance, but when comparing it to previous years, it's right in line with what we'd expect for late February. Looking back at the same date and time in 2019, we see soil temps were running about 5 degrees cooler with mid-30s in the Panhandle to mid-40s in the far southeast. This makes sense in that last year the winter was a little bit colder than this one has been so far. We can easily look back further with the Mesonet 15-year average for 4-inch soil shown here in blue. The dark line is the current year-to-date. Again, we see the warmer than normal start of the year, but soil temperatures have moderated to just about normal over the last couple of weeks. The good news is we are seeing a couple of weeks of warmer than normal temperatures indicated by all of the reds when looking at the long-term forecast. Gary is up next with drought and rainfall information.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, we had some more precipitation across the state, actually a couple of times over the past week or so. Did it hit the mark? Did it allow us to get rid of some of that drought in the southwest or in the western panhandle? Let's take a look at the drought monitor map. Well, we missed the mark a little bit. We did shave a little bit of that abnormally dry yellow off the top of that area down in southwestern Oklahoma, the far northern part, but we still have that area of moderate drought down from Jackson through Tillman counties, and of course out in the far western panhandle still remain in moderate drought with a little bit of that severe drought up in northern Cimarron County. March could be cooler than normal. At least the increased odds, especially across the eastern half of the state, are showing up for cooler than normal conditions for the state of Oklahoma. And then, of course, for precipitation, most of the state sees equal chances of below, above, or near normal precipitation amounts, but the far northeast corner does see increased odds for below normal precipitation. I'm thinking with all the rainfall that those folks have seen over the last year or so that they're probably a little bit anxious for the chance to dry out. How about for the climatological spring itself? That runs from March through May. The spring outlooks from the Climate Prediction Center do see for that 3-month period overall increased odds of above normal temperatures out in the far western panhandle and also the southern third of the state. Now the rest of the state we see equal odds of above, below, or near normal temperatures, so not really much of a signal there. And for precipitation, again, not much of a signal for most of the state except for below normal precipitation amounts are expected, or at least that's what the odds indicate, out across the far western panhandle. Now, as I've said many times, spring is right around the corner. You know that as well as I do, and you also know that just about anything can happen during an Oklahoma spring. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
So many times when we're out talking with state specialists, we're usually in a test plot, and Josh, we're in a test plot of wheat, and you have actually been doing some tests on sorghum across the state. What kind of results have you seen from all of those?
Yeah, well, I mean, we do a lot of stuff in a lot of crops throughout the year, Dave, and our sorghum plots and our sorghum variety are probably one of the highlights we have in the sorghum industry every year. And you know, we always get really good data, and it might not be as good a yields as we'd like to see, but it's always good data, and that's exactly what we got last year. You know, it's one of those years to where you truly experience Oklahoma hardships between drought and the flooded conditions, early freezes, you know, late cool weather. The southern Great Plains was really hit really bad this last year, but I think last year showed everybody how resilient our summer crops actually can be. And that's the reason why we have these wide testings. You know, our variety testings go throughout the state, really key regions. We try to hit various growing systems. That way, when we do have this and growers come to us with questions of, you know, what about in droughty periods, over wet, you know, sandy ground, clayey ground, we have the answers to those. And for sorghum, they get those a lot of times with the sorghum performance trial results, which just came out recently. Depending on what company seed pin that you wear, there's a really good option for Oklahoma, and there's a really good option for a lot of growers in Oklahoma. That's probably the hallmark. What to take away is no matter what you want to go with, talk to your local dealer, because there's some really good yield options.
For the producer that may not be familiar with sorghum, what are some of the high points of planting sorghum over the summer?
Yeah, so on sorghum, one of the number one things we have to deal with on a year-to-year basis is sugarcane aphids. It definitely is something that we have to deal with or have to plan on every year, because while they might not show up every year, if they do, they can be very, very negative. And so when we're talking about managing against sugarcane aphids, planting early is probably your best situation for that. We'd like to see temperatures warm up. Critical soil temperature for sorghums is about 60 to be safe. We do have hybrids that work okay at 58 and 55 degrees soil temperature. So if we're wanting to push the envelope, going a little bit earlier, that way either A, we have plenty of room to plant wheat following sorghum, or B, we want to make sure we beat aphids in the year. Growers have those options, and we have that data available. The other thing is pre-emergence herbicides, especially in a year like this, to where we have some moisture coming out of the winter, and we got some good soil moisture in the spring. And it seems like somewhere in the state, about every Wednesday to Saturday, we're going to get some rain here for the next several weeks. So with that kind of conditions coming through, and with it being cool right now, burn down might not be a very great option right now. So we might get a little close to our sorghum planting windows and our corn planting windows. Make sure you get a good burn down before, and make sure you get a great pre-emergence option. All of our summer crops need that pre-emergence, and make sure you have those down and available, because our two biggest pests, like I said, sugarcane aphids and typically grassy weeds for our sorghum crop, are what kind of hinder us.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Josh Lofton, Cropping Systems Specialist here at Oklahoma State University. And if you'd like to see the report that he talked about earlier on, go to our website, SUNUP.okstate.edu.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. Kim, lots of market news this week in terms of the coronavirus. Let's talk specifics in terms of crop markets.
Well, it's now hitting the grain markets. They were stable. I kind of ignored it for a while, but it's the group mentality. It's impacting just about everything. There's so potential impacts in the future. So they're taking risk protection, and those prices are declining.
Let's talk now about the USDA 2020 Agricultural Outlook Forum. That's big news this week as well. How are things looking for wheat?
Well, it looks like we're going to have more wheat. The World Outlook Board also came out with their projections for world production, 28.7 billion bushels. That's a record. That's 600 million bushels above last year's record of 28.1 billion bushels. But U.S. wheat production is projected to be lower. It's came in at 1.84 billion bushels compared to 1.92 last year. Our ending stocks going down to 777 million bushels compared to 965 last year. But with that higher world production and higher world stocks, we're only getting about 25 cents on that price. Oklahoma, this year's average about $4.20. That'd be $4.55 for next year.
What changes are expected in the corn market?
Well, as you look at corn, they increased the corn planted acres by 4.3 million acres. Of course, you're going to have more production. Production at a record 15.5 billion bushels compared to 13.7 last year. Of course, last year we had prevented planting and such. Ending stocks on corn increased to 2.6 billion bushels, up from 1.9, and the price down to $3.60 from $3.85. So a lot more corn and a lower price.
With that happening with corn, are we expected to see soybeans go higher?
I don't think so, because you look at the planted acres for bean, they raised them 9 million bushels. You think with 4 million more going into corn, you wouldn't have it in beans. But remember, last year there was a prevented planted. You got production at 4.2 billion bushels, up from 3.6. You've got ending stocks declining because they're taking into consideration the Chinese purchases there, going down to 320 million bushels, down from 425. But our prices only up a nickel to $8.80 on an average price.
Last but not least, the projections for cotton.
You look at cotton, they lowered the planted acres for cotton, so there's some of our bean and corn acres to 12.5 million acres, down from 13.7, lowered production to 19.5 million bales, down from 20.1. Our price slightly higher, going from 62 cents to 64 cents. So cotton relatively stable.
All righty, Kim, thanks a lot. We will see you next week. And that will do it for us this week. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time at SUNUP.